Okay, in this video we're going to talk about greatest common factor and factor by grouping. So we're going to start with greatest common factor, also known as GCF. Okay, so if you ever see GCF, that's just abbreviation for that. So greatest common factor is the reverse of distribution. So let's remember distribution looks like this. Okay, so we distribute over the parentheses by multiplying through, and we get 2x squared plus 6x. So GCF is the reverse of that. You take something like 2x squared plus 6 and you look for what the terms have in common that we can divide out to the front. So you're looking for the greatest common factor of the numbers and all the x's, y's, a's, b's, and so on. Okay, so 2 and 6 have 2 in common. I can divide a 2 out to the front. And then we can see that both terms have an x. The most I can take out is 1x, because this one only has 1x to give. So I factor 2x out to the front, and I see what I have left. So I took the 2 out to the front, I'm left with nothing or 1. And then I had 2 x's here, I took 1 out to the front, so I've got 1x left over. All right, in the second term, I've got plus. I factored 2 out, I'm left with 3. I factored the x out, it's gone, so I'm just left with a 3 in the second term. Okay, so you can see these are the same, whether I distribute or whether I factor. You should be able to distribute and factor all day and nothing changes. Okay, so we're doing the reverse of distribution. Okay, let's try another one. Let's say we've got 12x to the fourth plus 24x cubed minus 9x squared. Okay, so look at the numbers first. What's the biggest number I can pull out from 12, 24, and 9? Okay, 3 goes into all of them. 9 doesn't go into these two, so the best that I can do is 3, because those are the only factors of 9. Okay, so 3, and then for the x's, the most I can take out is an x squared. Okay, so x squared. All right, so we're going to factor 3x squared out to the front. Remember, we're dividing that out. So 3 from 12 would leave us with 4. We took out 2 x's. We had 4 x's to start with, so we've got 2 left, so that'd be x squared. All right, next one, we factored 4 out. We're left with 6 and 1x, so 6x. And then here we've got minus. We factored 3 out. We're left with 3, and the x squared got factored out, so it's gone. So we're left with minus 3. Okay, so that's the basic idea there. And if you're ever unsure, you can always distribute again and make sure that you get back to where you started. Okay, so that's the basic idea for GCF. All right, now let's talk about factor by grouping. Factor by grouping is really just another version of GCF. So let's say that we've got x times x plus 3 plus 2 times x plus 3. Okay, now we can look at a group as a common factor as well. So you see both of these terms have x plus 3 in them. So you could think of this like x times a plus 2 times a. We see that they have a in common. We can factor a out and we'd be left with x plus 2. Okay, so the GCF here is a. Well, if you look at these groups, see it's the same thing. X times something, 2 times something, x times something, 2 times something. We can, if it matches, we can factor that something out to the front. So I've got an x plus 3 here, I've got an x plus 3 here. I can factor that out, and what I'm left with is x plus 2. Okay, so really this is just a common factor. It looks a little different, but it's just a common factor. Let's try one more. Let's say we've got x times x plus 5 minus 4 times x plus 5. Okay, so see here the common factor is x plus 5. It matches in both terms. So we can factor that out to the front. Okay, x plus 5 gets taken out to the front, and we're left with x minus 4. Okay, so we're factoring a group out now. All right, now we can take this one step further to do factor by grouping. So we would have something like x cubed plus x squared plus 4x plus 4. Okay, let's say we have this. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to group these and factor and hope that we get something like what we had on the left. So I'm going to group the first two together. I'm going to group the second two together and see how much I can pull out of just those two. If you look, we don't have a GCF for the whole thing. You always want to check for that first, okay? And then when we have 4 terms, we're going to try factor by grouping. So group the first two, group the last two, and see what happens. So from the first two, I could take out an x squared, and I'm left with x plus, this whole thing is gone now, that's a 1. Okay, if you factor everything out, it's a 1, because look at when you distribute back, x cubed, x squared, you need that 1 there. Okay, and then here, in the second group, we can pull out a 4, and we're left with x plus 1 again. All right, now look, we've got a common factor now, x plus 1 in both terms. So I can factor x plus 1 to the front, and I'm left with x squared plus 4. Okay, and that's factor by grouping. When you see 4 terms, you should think factor by grouping. Group the first two, group the last two. And if you factor them, hopefully something matches you and you can pull that out. All right, let's try another one. Okay, let's say we've got x cubed plus 3x squared plus 6x plus 18. Okay, so we see 4 terms. We don't have any common factors. We can't pull a number out of all these. This one doesn't have a number. We can't pull an x out. This one doesn't have an x. We can't combine terms because they're all different. Okay, so we've got 4 terms and we think factor by grouping. Okay, so group the first two, group the last two. So we can take x squared out of the first two, and we're left with x plus 3. And we can take a 6 out of the second group, and we're left with x plus 3. All right, and these match, which they need to, so we can factor out x plus 3, and we're left with x squared plus 6. Okay, so that's the idea for factor by grouping. All right, let's try one with different signs, because we've got to make sure that we get these to match. So let's say that we've got, oops, x cubed minus 2x squared minus 8x plus 16. Okay, let's try this one. All right, so look for a common factor first, always. Okay, there's nothing that we can take out of all of them, so no common factor. We see 4 terms, so let's try factor by grouping. Okay, so I can take an x squared out of the first one, and I'm left with x minus 2. All right, and I can take an 8 out of the next one, but look at what happens if I just take out 8. I get negative x plus 2. Those don't match. Okay, but if I take a negative out, these signs will get reversed. So let's back up. Okay, let's back up and try taking out a negative 8 and see if that fixes the signs. All right, so we're going to take out a negative 8. That's going to reverse all the signs on the inside. So this will be positive, this will be negative. So I'm left with x minus 2. Okay, double check. I'd have negative 8x plus 16, and that's what I started with. Okay, so now they do match. All right, so sometimes you got to take a negative out in order to get these two groups to match. That's very important. Okay, so now they match. Now we've got x minus 2. I can factor that out to the front. And I'm left with x squared minus 8. X squared minus 8. Okay, and then that's completely factored. All right, so be careful of the signs as well. Sometimes you have to factor a sign out to get things to match.